Morning, everyone. I'm Emily Shanahan. I'm the Outreach Coordinator at Communities for Alcohol and Drug-Free Youth, otherwise known as CADY. I just want to start by thanking Dr. Bonnie Bichard and her social entrepreneurship students at PSU for putting together this wonderfully creative event during this really challenging time. We greatly applaud your creativity and we're so excited to be a part of this event. Addiction can happen to anyone at any time, young or old. It's a devastating equal opportunity disease, and sadly, so many of us have lost someone to the addiction crisis. That's why CADY and Plymouth State University's Tiger program are bringing Alex's story, a true life account of a New Hampshire teenager, to you today to prevent addiction and save lives. Because it's so difficult for someone in recovery to keep recounting their story, we have Brittany, a professional actress, sharing Alex's story, and then the real Alex will be joining us for a live Q&A after the performance, which you can access in a link provided on the online agenda. We want to extend a huge thank you to Minus 33 Merino Wool Clothing for sponsoring this performance, and also thank each and every one of you for giving your full attention to Alex's story. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Alex and I'm a recovering addict. I'm here today because I sat where you're sitting not that long ago thinking that would never happen to me. But I'm not that different from you, and I'm here to tell you that it can happen. I'm here to share my story. Before I started using, I had a lot of advantages in life. I was in sports, I was in scouts, I had a really nice family, and I didn't really have many problems. My life was pretty good, but all of that started to change once I got to middle school. I was hanging out with all sorts of different crowds. I was hanging out with the sports kids, I was hanging out with the nerds, a bunch of different people, but after a while, I started to spend more time with my friends from up the street. And it was those friends who introduced me to marijuana for the first time. One day we were all hanging out and one of my friends was like, "Hey, do you want to try this?" And I said, "Sure." And then I started to smoke like once or twice a month, not a lot, and only when I was hanging out with those friends. And it wasn't really a big deal. But after a while, things started to get worse. And by the time I reached the end of my 8th grade year, I was pretty much smoking every day after school. And that's also when I got introduced to different prescription benzos, such as Valium, Xanax, and then I was introduced to alcohol. And I really love to drink. I would steal beers from my parents. I would have my friends for a 21 buy for me. It just got to this point where anything that I could do to get messed up, I would do it, whether that be drinking, smoking, or taking pills. Freshman year of high school was when my parents really found out about my addiction. I had smoked weed before school, gone to school, and was suspended for being under the influence while in school. So now my parents knew that I had a problem and they wanted me to get help. So they brought me to see this counselor or psychologist, and I went to see him like once or twice a week, but honestly, I hated the guy. Couldn't stand him. I thought that I knew everything and he knew nothing. And I was only smoking weed, so like what was the big deal? So I stopped going to see him and I kept smoking. And things continued to get worse. When I was 16, I got really drunk and I blacked out and I was basically left for dead on the side of the road. Now, for most people, when something like this happens, they would get help or stop using, but for me, I didn't care. I just said, okay, you can drink this much and then you'll black out, so if you don't drink this much, you'll be okay. I thought I was in control. A couple months after that happened, I was introduced to Percocet for the first time, which became my drug or opiate of choice. I was hanging out with my friends, the same ones who introduced me to marijuana. And one of his older brothers, who was always trying to get us to smoke weed or do this or do that, was like, "Hey, I have this pill. Do you want to try it?" And, I had seen them do it before and it looked like they were having so much fun. And I was like, well, I want that. Why wouldn't I? So I tried it. And, I can't really describe the feeling that I had, but it just felt like I was invincible. Like I was on top of the world. Little did I know that that pill would literally destroy my life. But by this point I was doing everything. I was drinking, I was smoking pot, I was taking pills, but you know, it wasn't really a big deal. It's not like I was snorting cocaine or shooting up heroin. So one of my other friends introduced me to a little blue pill called Perk 30s. And he showed me how to smoke it. And I just hit it off with that. I mean, that little blue pill literally controlled my life from the age of 16 to 17 years old. And I was doing anything I could to get it. I was stealing from my parents, I was stealing from my friends. I was taking anything that wasn't bolted down and selling it. All of the money that I was making from my work was just going back into drug dealers' pockets, but I still didn't think I had a problem. I was just like, well, I'm just being a teenager. Just doing what teenagers do, right? Just having fun. So I got into a fight. Okay, I didn't really get into a fight. I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and I got punched in the face. But it really freaked me out. So I decided to go to my school resource counselor, you know, because I thought I was going to get beaten up. And while I was there, I just decided to spill my guts, and I said, I have a drug problem and I need help. So they took me from school and they brought me to the emergency room and they ran some blood tests. The only thing that they found in my system was marijuana. They said that I didn't test positively for anything else. And that was kind of the end of it. I mean, I don't know if they just shoved it under the rug or thought I was being sincere when I told them I was going to stop using, but I continued to use. And things continued to get worse. The same friend who introduced me to the Perk 30s introduced me to heroin. And the first time I tried it, I was at his house and I saw it lying in some tin foil. And I said, hey, what's that? Oh, it's heroin, he said. Do you want to try it? And I said, sure. And it just spiraled out of control after that. I mean, I learned that heroin is way cheaper than the perks and way more bang for my buck, but it was like the snowball effect. It was like I was rolling down this hill faster and faster and faster, and there's nothing I could do to stop it, but I still didn't think I had a problem. You know, I thought, okay, you can try this drug and you won't get addicted to it. You won't have to do it for the rest of your life. You know, you're not that kind of person, you're different. But after a while, I was doing it every single day, just like the perks. I was snorting it, I was smoking it, but it just wasn't enough. I started to have these dreams of what it would be like to shoot up. And so one day, you know, I said, everyone else is doing it, so the hell with it. And I tried it. That was the summer of 2013. And there was no going back. And I was doing it every single day. Still stealing from anybody that I could. My parents, my little brother, my sister, I was just taking, and I didn't think I had a problem. You know, I tried telling myself, well, it doesn't matter that you're robbing from your parents because you're gonna go get messed up and you'll forget all about it. Or it doesn't matter that your parents might need this money for food because you're gonna go get messed up and that is all that matters. And I still didn't think I had a problem. And then finally, in October of 2013, I got a text message from one of my friends saying that he had stolen his stepdad's iPad and traded it for heroin. And at the time, I was really angry with him, so I took the text messages that he had sent to me and I sent them to his mom. His mom sent them to the police, and then the police showed up at my school. And that's when I decided to admit to my parents that I was shooting up dope. Well, I admitted it to my mom. My dad found out later, days later, actually, on his 26th wedding anniversary. But now my parents knew that I was shooting up dope and they wanted me to get help. So they brought me to see a counselor, a different one. And I put on the charade that I was doing okay, that I did not need to go to therapy or to rehab, that I could kick this thing on my own, that all I needed to do was have the support of my family and friends, that I could just smoke weed and not do prescription pills or heroin and everything would be fine. But in reality, I was like, this guy has no idea what he's talking about because I am still using and he is completely clueless. I'm fooling him, and it is just so easy. January 7th, the last day that I used. I was sitting in my room, and I don't know, something just came over me, and I just decided, I don't want to live like this anymore. I have completely destroyed my relationship with my parents. I've lost countless friends. I have nothing good going on in my life, and if I keep going on this way, I'm just going to end up dead. So I decided to admit to my brother and sister that I was still using. I gave all my paraphernalia to my dad, and 6 days later, on my 18th birthday, I was admitted to my first rehab facility in Brockton, Mass, known as the Castle. And I spent 2 weeks there. And they taught me how to be happy without the use of drugs, which was really a big concern of mine because, I mean, I had been using for the past 5 years, since I was 13. Like, I didn't even know what it was like to go for a walk without being messed up, or to watch TV without being messed up. I had convinced myself that in order to enjoy my life, I had to be high. But they taught me the opposite, that this chemical in my body is not what creates happiness. I can do it on my own. So after 2 weeks there, I was transferred to the Phoenix House in Dublin, New Hampshire. And if I'm being completely honest, I didn't want to go. I, had told myself, well, you beat this thing. You are going to be sober. There's no reason why you need to go to a month-long rehab where they're just going to tell you the same crap they told you at the castle. I already know it, so why do I need to go? I know that I'm going to be sober, so what's the point? But then I realized that that was the same thinking that I was using when I was in active addiction. And that in order for me to stay in recovery, I had to put myself in an uncomfortable position. So I went to the Phoenix House on January 27th, and I stayed there until March 21st of 2014. And I found out that I was wrong, that I had a lot to learn. And I met some really amazing people, and I learned a lot about myself, but more importantly, I was finally away from those people that kept getting me back into using. Those friends were out of my life for good, and I was given clean time. I also learned that I have this passion for sobriety. So if you are smoking weed, that's a problem. Marijuana is a gateway drug in 2 ways. 1, it introduces you to the feeling of being high, and you might want to chase that high. You might want to try something else. 2, it introduces you to the people who can get you the harder drugs. The same person who can get you your weed can also get you alcohol or prescription pills or heroin or whatever else. And now I'm not saying that marijuana means that you're going to do other drugs, but it does mean that you're going to be around them. Now, there are a couple things that I know now that I wish I'd known back then that I'd like to share with you. 1, I can safely say, after going through what I've been through, that drugs really are as bad as people say they are. 2, you have to find the willpower to say no, even when it's hard. And 3, you gotta just stop caring so much about what people think of you. I mean, if I hadn't cared so much about what people thought of me when I was 13, then I would have been doing whatever it is I wanted to do without the use of drugs, because nothing good comes from using drugs. You can either end up in one of 3 places: jails, institutions, or dead. And none of those sound fun to me. And you might be sitting there thinking, well, that won't happen to me. I'm not that kind of person, I'm different. But you're not different. And every single person who is using that thinking. Every single person who is using is thinking, I don't have a problem. But it's the ones who admit to having a problem and get the help, those are the ones that usually get better, because listen, It can happen to anybody. You could be the big CEO of some company, you could come from a broken family, or you could be like me and still become an addict. No one is exempt from becoming an addict. But the good news is there are people out there who want to see you recover, and they want to support you. And I am so lucky that I found those people, because they taught me how to see the world and appreciate it for what it is without the use of drugs. And it's hard. It is a battle every single day, sometimes every single minute of every single day. Because you're never cured. You're never recovered. You are in recovery. Addiction is a disease. And once you admit to being an addict, you're an addict for life. It's sort of like when a cucumber becomes a pickle. Once it's a pickle, there's no going back to being a cucumber. You are what you are. And the sooner that you could admit that and get the help, the better. Because it's only going to get worse. You know, there's no such thing as a recreational hard drug user. You can't just use frequently and then say, I don't have a problem. But even if you are sitting there thinking, I don't have a problem, just know that that's the addiction talking. Or even if you've never tried drugs, I still encourage you to be careful, because I want you to learn from my mistakes. Our brains are wired in this really weird way where once we start something, it's really hard to stop. So yes, it is a battle and it is hard, but with the right support, it is possible to recover. And it's worth it.